name's Jacqueline, and I'm an online student through MSU, and I'm taking a speech class, and one of our requirements is to do similar to probably speeches that you guys have to do. It's called an informative speech. And so going into a little bit about me, I grew up about an hour and a half from Los Angeles and San Diego, and so I was pretty fortunate growing up to be able to go to Disneyland a whole bunch. And so I thought, you know, that might be a good topic to kind of give some info on Disneyland and how to have a great trip if you guys were so inclined to plan one. Really, there's so much to Disneyland that I thought I could try to simplify it and break it down a little bit. Some history, some of the background on Disney. First of all, Walt. Walt Disney, when the plan for Disneyland started to come about, he was already a well-established illustrator. He had developed celebrity through all of his well-known illustrations. We all know Mickey and a bunch of other animated productions. He had taken a slight break. He was on vacation with his kids. He had taken his girls to a local park where they were riding on a carousel. He's sitting at a bench and he's watching, and he realizes that there's a separation there. He's not connected to his family while they're enjoying the fun, and he thought, you know, there's an opportunity there. And sort of that's how his crazy, amazing mind developed the beginning plans for Disneyland. And so soon after, plans were drawn, and 365 days from that point, Disneyland was open, which is astounding. Today, that would be an astounding construction speed. As the project opened, the park opened July of 1955. It cost about $17 million at the time to make, which in today's terms, that's about $116 million. So a ton of money, and the majority of it really went into the detail, which we have all kind of grown to expect from Disney. But at the time, nobody had seen anything like that. As the plans grew and grew, he had to continue to buy what was currently orange groves in Los Angeles. Now the park's footprint is about 172 acres, which is about plus or minus 82 football fields. This is a whole lot. It sounds huge and crazy detailed. So to simplify it down a little bit, I thought that I'd kind of give you guys some info on what to watch for, some things to keep in mind when you guys go. First of all, there's this somewhat not always well understood concept called the Fast Pass that you guys can use there. How it basically works is you can go to a ride and you can easily stand in line for like 2 hours, and it's hot, it's annoying, and it's, you know, kids everywhere and strollers poking you. So instead, at the front of the ride, there's usually little kiosks, and they do it for like the most popular rides. And there will be little kiosks, and what you can do is you can stamp your admission ticket. There'll be a return later time on there. And what that means is you stamp your ticket, let's say it's 2 hours from the time that you're there. You go, you eat lunch, you go do another ride, what have you. You come back at that time that's stated, and you go right to the front of the line, get on the ride, and you're first to go. There are some crazy lines, and that kind of opportunity is great for rides like Splash Mountain, Space Mountain. I'm not sure how many rides you guys are familiar with, but all the popular ones. Another thing to keep in mind when you guys are there is that really every aspect of Disney, whether it be stores, rides, what have you, there's a story behind all of it. And one of the really kind of special ones is what's called, they call it Walt's Lamp. And what that means is on Main Street, when you're walking in, there's a fire station there. And the background is when Walt was drawing up these plans, he realized he was going to be spending a ton of time there, and his family would be spending some time there. So he had included in the plans a fully functional apartment that's above the firehouse. And everybody worked such long hours to get this off the ground in 365 days that it became expected that at any point you could look up in the window above the firehouse and see Walt sitting at his desk with his lamp shining on to the desk and onto Main Street. And so to this day, that lamp is on. Disney keeps that on as kind of a homage to him, suggesting his spirit is still here, even though obviously Walt's been long gone. Another cool thing to be aware of when you guys are there is the Matterhorn is a ride there that's basically a big mountain with a huge roller coaster inside of it. And 2/3 of that ride is roller coaster and, you know, cool stuff with monsters and what have you. The upper half, or I should say upper third of that mountain was empty. And so when it was constructed in 1959, construction personnel got together with the management. They're like, you know, what do you guys want to do with this? And they put it up to a vote to the Disney employees, and the employees voted to make it a basketball court. So on the inside of the Matterhorn, there's a fully functioning basketball court on the upper third of that, which is private just for these employees to use on their break or at their leisure. According to CNN.com, it's 147 feet, the mountain from the top, so essentially the top third chunk of that is this supposedly really souped up basketball court. Another really interesting kind of eerie thing to be aware of is the possibility of real ghosts at Disneyland. So there have been a ton of people that have been caught with remains, their loved ones' remains. They bring it into Disney. One probably of the most touching stories is of a family who lost their 7-year-old son. And they got with Disney and they said, hey, we want to hold a small ceremony, not a funeral, but a small ceremony for him outside near the Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion has beautiful grounds and all sorts of plants, and it's gorgeous. So they said, sure, you can do that right at closing time. And so the family came. They told them, we're just going to ride the Haunted Mansion, like, since we're here while we're waiting for the park to close. Okay, no problem. They get on the ride, and they start to see, the park employees start to see through the security cameras that the family actually snuck in the boys' remains and were scattering the boys' remains through, as they were sitting in what's called the doom buggies of the Haunted Mansion. And so Disney swears that they cleaned it, you know, all these things, but there's a suggestion that there's a significant possibility of ghosts while at Disneyland. So another kind of consideration when you're thinking about going to try to make this trip really fun is mapping your route. You can imagine how humongous this park is, right? And so if you kind of just go in and haphazardly hit things, you're not going to hit everything. It's located in Anaheim, California, the park is, which is in Southern California, and it gets like wicked hot there, super, super hot. And so we kind of joke with my family, but I swear every memory I can think of as a kid is me coming home with what we call the souvenir sunburn, because, you know, like your shoulders are burnt, your hairline, what have you. So use that Fast Pass when you're doing things like Splash Mountain, Space Mountain, but use it strategically around hot times. So if you're starting to notice, like, dang, it's 12:30 and I'm smoking, go over, do your Fast Pass at Splash Mountain, go back, eat your lunch, and by the time it's time for you to return, then you'll have a nice cool off, and it'll be a feel-good strategic move. Splash Mountain is pretty cool. You definitely don't want to miss this one. It's a log ride that's based off of the Disney Brer Rabbit cartoons, which is kind of before my time, and certainly before your time. But it's fun, there's tunnels, there's animals, what have you. But the best part is that a 52-foot drop, the log ride does a 52-foot drop, and thus is the splash part. So depending upon where you sit on the log, you can get drenched or mildly cooled off. Space Mountain. Space Mountain is probably one of the most well-known rides. It's ranked number 3 by Thrillist.com. Space Mountain is for early teens and older. It's kind of fast and dippy and scary because it's pitch black. The description is it's a rocket soar through the darkest reaches of outer space. So it's probably, if you're going to make sure that you hit any ride, I definitely make sure that you hit that one. Small World. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, probably have heard the song for sure. Small World is, albeit probably one of the most annoying rides possible. It's basically a big tunnel where you're on a boat, and it's a big tunnel of like what feels like millions of little kids singing in other languages because it's all the kids from around the world, right? But who cares? The best part about it is that when it's 90 degrees out and you're spent, it's 4 p.m., you've been there all day, the water's really cool, and so it keeps the tunnel really cool. And so, and the lines are always short because people don't always want to. So it's really good strategically. Think about that one when you're mapping your route. Know that, hey, I'm going to be hot. I need to cool down. Let's plan on this one towards the end of the day. Haunted Mansion, arguably everybody's favorite. Haunted Mansion, it's I mean, it sounds a little weird to say because it's supposed to be about ghosts and tombstones and haunted stuff, but it's beautiful. The building is beautiful. The grounds are amazing. It's not only because of the recent movie, but just the way that they upkeep it. It stays super modern and super applicable to all the stuff that we're always into. But they strike a really cool balance because it's not too spooky for like the little ones. So, it never gets old. See, my suggestion for Haunted Mansion is, I like to save that one. I save it towards the end of the day. One, because when it's dark out, it makes it kind of cooler, like spookier. But also because the momentum is different. So when you're first starting your day, you get there, you're pumped, you have, you want to run through the park and do everything. Haunted Mansion is a slower pace and more of a storyteller vibe. So I'd save that for the end of the day to close with. The kind of last thing in regards to attractions to think about when you're mapping is buffer attractions or buffer areas. So a lot of these rides, you hurry up, you go there, and you stand in line for what feels like forever. There are smaller kids attractions that are always kind of based upon whatever's cool right now. So, for instance, right now they have a big Cars land, because Cars is a big deal for little kids, but it's actually really cool for me too. And there's no real lines because there's no specific ride per se, and so the reason why I call it a buffer zone is because you don't have to wait for anything. You can go in, you can check everything out, look at all these really cool characters, experience it, and so it's kind of nice, especially if you have young people or people with shorter attention spans or lack of patience, because you can wait in line forever and experience this ride and then go do this thing as a buffer before you amp them back up to wait in line for another ride. So consider that. Next thing to be aware of when you're planning your trip is things to avoid. So a lot of people don't realize how important it is to get there early. First of all, it takes a long time to get from the parking lot just to the park itself. There's tram rides or bus rides to shuttle you over, and that takes time. Also, lines start forming at the front of the gate easily an hour and change ahead of time. So what we always do, and what I would suggest, is get there at least an hour to an hour and a half before the gates open. Bring your breakfast, bring all your sunscreen stuff, whatever stuff you're going to be putting in your lockers. Bring that to the front. Get in line, and you do your sunscreen there. You eat your breakfast there. You chill out there. Look at your map, figure out what you want to do. Once you're in the park, the first thing I suggest to do is do Fantasyland. Reason being, Fantasyland is full of a lot of the things that we know and love, like Dumbo or Teacups, or kind of the smaller kids stuff. And the reason why I say go there first is because as the day wanes on, there's a ton of families that come and kind of like inundate that area. And so we're talking strollers and tons of kids and just kind of mayhem. And most people don't want to deal with that if they're not in that boat of kids and strollers and what have you. So I would do that first if you want to go. Another thing to think about when you're planning your trip, if at all possible, do not, trust me, don't even try to go during holidays or summertime. Summertime, like I said before, it's just so hot. It makes it kind of miserable. I mean, no matter what you're baking, and you get to the point where you're just spent. Holidays, Disney, as I've kind of mentioned before, they are branded upon their detail, right? And so holidays, it's no exception. It is extravaganza time. But, I mean, there's so many people. So unless you're there and you want to just like kind of sit and look at all the decorations and experience it that way, it's going to be really hard to get any sort of momentum behind you to be able to experience the rides you want to get to because of the amount of crowds. Another thing that not everyone realizes is that under the sort of topic of refurbishment. So, according to DisneyByTheNumbers.com, a 2007 survey showed that on average about 14.9 million people come through annually. So you can imagine the wear and tear. I mean, it's tremendous, right? So what they deem as their slower months, they basically have to, whether it be paint, gears, cleaning, I mean, you name it, right? Even if just one person's touching something 14.9 million times, they're gonna have to scrub it for a while. So, mid-January through mid-March, there is always a fair amount of rides, shops, food places, all sorts of things that are just plain closed for refurbishment. So if there's any kind of gotta-dos for you, make sure you guys call ahead or look on their website and see, because a lot of times they'll post, hey, Space Mountain or the Cars Land or whatever it is, it's gonna be closed for refurbishment. Really, that will give you at least a start in getting into planning a really fun trip. If I could wish anything for you guys, obviously it would be to have a magical time, right? To realize that this is one of the best places and everyone's favorite, and to wish you a magical trip. Don't forget, if I could leave you with anything, it would be, don't forget about the food. So Disney spares no expense, and obviously they have the standard like Mickey-shaped carnival type stuff, but they also have the full other end of the spectrum of wicked gourmet options that you wouldn't even consider, and then pretty much everything in between. So don't, short yourself that way. Make sure that you really enjoy the food too. If I had to guess why people consider this the happiest place on earth, I feel like it's truly because, and I wouldn't consider myself a Disney fanatic by any means, but I genuinely feel like this is the happiest place on earth for people because of the way that Disney customizes the experience for each participant. It is truly something you're participating in, an experience. And so that's kind of what keeps these memories endearing to our hearts and really keeps us coming back. So that's a brief overview, guys, on how to maximize on having a great trip at Disney. And thanks again for listening, and I appreciate you having me. That's it.